name is Dean Ketchum, and this is my presentation on my project on time perception and infinite scrolling. For a long time, Americans have consumed long-form video content for news broadcasts, television shows, movies, and sports. And this normally consists of breaks for advertisements, timestamps, so a clear start and finish to this content. And this type of content is any video longer than 10 minutes. Now, in recent years, social media has really exploded into our world. Specifically, over the past decade, we've seen a rise of the infinite scrolling format on social media. And this is when users can swipe up to bring up a second video or another video for an infinite amount of time. There's no limit or end to how many videos they can watch or how much time they can spend scrolling. And unlike long-form video content, this is any video less than 10 minutes long. There are hardly any ad breaks. And if there are ads, users can simply swipe past them instantaneously to keep the immersive experience going. So for me, I have wasted countless hours on these apps, specifically TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and Instagram Reels. Those are the three most popular leading platforms. And I wanted to know, why is it so easy to spend more time than intended and to waste so much time on these apps? That was really the question that guided my living. And so I'm not alone in my struggles against social media. In fact, 22% of all TikTok users use the app for more than 1 hour per day. Additionally, 2/3 of all Americans aged from 18 to 19 years old use TikTok, so it is very, very common among teens. And teens spend 1.5 hours per day on TikTok alone. And these are really staggering numbers when you consider the recent collaborative review of research on social media effects by Jonathan Haidt that showed that heavy social media use was directly associated with negative mental health outcomes. And this includes depression, anxiety, sleep disturbance, and many more. Now, when I was investigating some of the causal mechanisms behind why it might be so easy to lose track of time on social media, the literature on cognitive time, or an individual's subjective experience of time, particularly stood out. I'm sure you've all heard of the old adage, time flies when you're having fun. And research has proven that this is actually very, very true. So not only are you, when you are very entertained, your cognitive time is passing at an accelerated rate, but when time is flying, you are also experiencing feelings of entertainment and enjoyment. There's also this concept of immersion and flow. When you are enjoying an experience so heavily, all distractions are shut out, time is moving faster, and you are just super focused on whatever it is that you're doing. And there are a lot of parallels here to the infinite scrolling short-form video content. There are no pauses or distractions, like I mentioned. You can scroll for as long as you want with very few breaks. It's constant entertainment and instant gratification and hits of dopamine for the user that they get by scrolling for more entertaining content. Additionally, algorithms are embedded in many of these platforms that are designed to find more entertaining content specifically for the user. And the relationship between cognitive time and social media has already been studied through Facebook by Ganitis et al. 2017, and he found that people underestimate the amount of time that they're spending on Facebook. And while this has been done in the context of Facebook, it needs to be updated because the rise of infinite scrolling is so pervasive and is affecting so many people, particularly teens, that we need to update this research, right? So I am looking at the causal relationship between infinite scrolling and cognitive time, or time perception. Additionally, Dylan Selterman, another researcher in the field of social media, directly stated that more research is needed on the causal model behind social media causing these feelings of distress or negative impacts. Right, so my guiding research question is there a causal relationship between infinite scrolling and cognitive time? So because I was investigating a causal relationship, I decided to use an experimental design for my method. And I created my own experiment here because, like I mentioned, no research has investigated this causal mechanism before. So it was necessary for me to create my own experiment. To do this, I gained IRB approval from ASU, and I did have a faculty advisor from ASU to help me through the research process. I used the Robert Cialdini Behavioral Research Lab in the W.P. Carey Department of Marketing at ASU, where research assistants collected the data for my survey. Participants were pulled from a pool of marketing students that participate in studies at the lab, and mine was one of them. So they were incentivized to participate in my study through faculty offering extra credit in their classes. After consenting to participate, participants were randomly assigned to one of two conditions, the first being TV and the second being scrolling. In the TV condition, participants were able to choose the streaming service that they wanted, and using personal accounts, watched a television show for 10 minutes on their smartphones. The scrolling condition, they used a platform of their choice to scroll for 10 minutes in the infinite scrolling short form video content format. And the reason that I'm choosing these two conditions is, again, to compare the effect of long form content on cognitive time versus short form content and infinite scrolling on cognitive time. And I use personal accounts here to make it as realistic as possible, so that algorithms could continue to personalize content for the user and make it as entertaining. So I designed my own survey on Qualtrics. It was 2 items and had a short demographic survey as well. The first question asked participants to evaluate the speed at which they perceived time to have passed while they were on their smartphone. And the second asked them to evaluate how many minutes they believed had passed while they were on their smartphone. And both of these were based on past research in the field of cognitive time. My first hypothesis is that participants will have a shortened perception of time in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition. And this means that not only will participants perceive time to have passed at a faster speed in the scrolling condition, but also that they believe that fewer minutes have passed in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition. Additionally, I predict that participants will underestimate the number of minutes that have passed in the scrolling condition compared to reality, which was, again, 10 minutes. My results were exported from Qualtrics to Excel spreadsheets and analyzed through SAS. I chose to run analysis of variance because, again, I'm looking at the causal effects of an independent variable on a dependent variable. So, participants in the TV condition believe that the speed of time was passing at very, very close to normal with a mean of 4.15. In the scrolling condition, this is very similar with a mean of 4.02. And again, this means that time was passing normally. So here you can see the analysis of variance revealed that that condition did not have a significant effect on the speed of time. In contrast, in the TV condition, participants believed that 10.28 minutes on average had passed, and in the scrolling condition, they believed that 9.38 minutes had passed, which is less than 10 and less than the TV condition. So my analysis of variance revealed that condition had a significant effect on the number of minutes that participants perceived to have passed. And you can see here my p-value of 0.02 demonstrates significance. Now, as an exploratory analysis, I also wanted to see, do certain demographics have any role to play in my results? And I actually found that the main effect of my study is qualified by gender interaction, such that women perceived that less time had passed in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition by a significant margin, right? You can see 10.88 minutes on average they believe had passed in the TV condition when compared to 9.1 minutes on average in the scrolling condition. Not only were they not able to identify that around 10 minutes had passed in reality, but there's also that difference between conditions. In contrast, the men believed that around the same number of minutes on average had passed in both conditions, and they were much, much closer to that 10-minute mark. So my first hypothesis is partially supported. Participants perceived fewer minutes to have passed in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition, but they believed that time had passed at the same speed, which was normal in both conditions. My second hypothesis is also supported. Participants underestimated the number of minutes that had gone by and fell short of that 10-minute mark. So scrolling caused participants to lose track of time. And this is in direct accordance with past research, specifically that Facebook study that also showed people are underestimating the amount of time that they're spending on these social media platforms. Importantly, or interestingly, the main effect of my study is qualified by gender interaction such that women perceived that fewer minutes on average had passed in the scrolling condition compared to the TV condition, but men perceived that approximately the same number of minutes had passed in both conditions. So, participants underestimated the amount of time that had passed by 6.2% or 0.62 minutes on average. Now, while this number may seem small initially, when you consider the excessive amount of time that many teens and just people in general are spending on these apps, that can really begin to add up to a lot of wasted time and untracked minutes very quickly. Furthermore, infinite scrolling alters cognitive time, or the subjective perception of time. And this is very, very important and fits in nicely to the gap in the research because it is a partial explanation for the mechanism behind why social media causes distress. So people are spending much more time than they intend scrolling. They're losing track of time, and then they are feeling guilty, regretful, and that can be associated with many other negative mental health outcomes. Right, so women drove the main effect of my study. And this also aligns with past research. In fact, teenage girls on average spend 0.8 hours more than boys on TikTok per day. So they're already spending more time on infinite scrolling platforms, right? And this also aligns with the fact that teenage girls are especially susceptible to the harmful effects of social media, which was also a main takeaway from the collaborative review of literature by John Haidt and his coworkers. So my findings offer a causal explanation as to why this effect on women is observed. Now, the main limitation of my study is that participants used personal accounts and content was uncontrolled. So this was an intentional decision because I wanted participants to be as immersed in the experience as possible, and I wanted it to be as realistic as possible. So this caused participants to be using different platforms and viewing different content. In the future, research should investigate if short-form video content is controlled, and we're still putting the study in the context of infinite scrolling. Do we still have the same effect? Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Very impressive. And I don't think we noticed at all that you went from 2 studies down to 1. So this really worked well. Okay. We got a couple of questions for you, and then we'll wrap this up. So this is a good one because it really relates to your story. How did the choices you made when designing and implementing your research method, how did that impact your final understanding?
Yeah, so I was very, very fortunate to be able to work with the Behavioral Research Lab at ASU. And not only did this allow me to collect a much larger sample size than I would have been able to on my own, but it let me realize that my results are really, really able to be applied to the broader context of my study, right? So if I had a smaller sample size, if I was not able to do exactly what I did, which was emulate a realistic experience, then I wouldn't be able to say the implications of my study are really, really important because it offers an explanation for the causal mechanism behind why the negative effects of social media are being observed.
Your findings, is that given you directions for future research in the field and where you should go?
Certainly, yeah. So I found that participants underestimate the number of minutes that they're spending on social media. So not only do we need to see if is this also applicable within a broader context of controlled content with the same format, like is instant gratification and constant entertainment as elevated when algorithms are not at play, or also like how do the findings of my study guide potential limitations on social media for like overuse to try to combat some of these negative effects, right? So there's really a lot of directions to go from here.
Thanks.
You're the only person I get to ask this question for. How did your expert advisor facilitate your deeper understanding of the research process?
So she primarily guided me in the IRB process, which I wasn't familiar with at all, and that actually consumed a pretty hefty amount of time. It was a lot of training, reading, and classes that I had to take to get qualified to be a researcher and have my study ran through the lab. But also, she offered so much invaluable feedback to my study, how I could improve my experiments, and ultimately, I owe a lot of my success to her. So I'm very thankful.